All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. So today's webinar is what's new in Nebula. I like to do one of these after we roll out any sort of major upgrades to Nebula. So it's going to be kind of boring, but we're going to go through a lot of stuff as we go through. But this is just to give you an idea of some of the things that changed. What the GUIs now look like, some of these new features that you might not be aware of, maybe some things here where how you do something has changed from how it used to be done. So we'll hopefully cover all of that for you and help make these big changes that we've done here a little bit easier to handle and understand. I know there has been absolutely a bunch of confusion because so much has changed um, with Nebula here with this most recent update. So I'm not going to go too in depth into this. Try just a few weeks ago did a webinar specifically focused here on this, but one of the big changes is we've now added support for the USG Flex into Nebula. And with the addition of the USG Flex, it opens up a lot more things that are can be done through the Nebula interface versus what could be done previously with the NSG gateways. So we'll go through some of those new features a little bit later here. It's a different security license. So essentially now if you're using a USG Flex, the UTM services are basically the same as in standalone mode, whereas the NSG had a little bit less going on there. We've added the ability to do CDR, collaborative detection and response, and to be able to do a security profile sync across multiple devices in the same org. Another really cool new feature is our new secure Wi-Fi feature. It basically allows you to use our Nebula access points as a VPN appliance. So, traditionally when you're trying to do VPN, you've either got to configure your end user's computer to set up the VPN and connect, or you have to give them a VPN appliance. And the problem is a lot of home users, their internet is coming in by all in one box. It's router, Wi-Fi, um, and modem all into one. And if you put a VPN appliance behind it, a lot of times it can be difficult to figure out how to prevent it from becoming double natted and other issues along those lines. So this allows you to use an AP. Just give your employee an AP, they would plug it in like any other AP into the LAN port of their existing device. And you can then connect to your work SSID and create a VPN connection back to the company office that way. So that's a nice little tool we have here for you. And then, of course, the big changes is we've introduced this new license 2.0. So I've just got a couple slides on this. We've done two previous webinars where we've really got in depth onto what those changes are. Those were recorded and those are available on our YouTube page. It's Zyxel North America channel, I think is what it's called. It's not the zippiest name to use, but that is on there as well as Try's webinar where he went more in depth onto the USG Flex integration with Nebula. So anyway, we'll just quickly go through here. So why did we change the Nebula licensing? Basically, we were the first to offer an SMB focused cloud, and a lot has changed since then. We beat Meraki Go by 2 years. We beat Aruba Instant On by 3. We were ahead of, Datto Cloud Tracks, Netgear's Insight, et cetera, et cetera. So the market itself has changed quite a bit since then. And a lot of it's changed just fairly recently. Ubiquity got rid of um, their Nebula Lite cloud service. That was something they were calling Ubiquity Elite, which is separate from their hosting their cloud controller in the cloud. It was a separate offering. And they have gotten rid of that and just turned it into extended support contracts without the cloud hosted there. Netgear just got rid of their free tier on their cloud services. So now in order to be able to manage your devices, you do have to have a paid subscription. Unification. So we've had two different licensing systems in place, one for our security firewall products and then one for Nebula, different features across each. So we are right now trying to unify those into one unified platform. So you'll have one interface to manage all of your products, both Nebula and non-Nebula at one location. And eventually here, once we get fully integrated, it's going to unlock some new features to make things easier. Um, So that is coming, new ways of doing billing, quicker ways to buy and apply licenses. So all of that is going to be coming as we fully integrate these two systems. We're not there yet. It's still going to be several months out before we do that. So the next phase of the integration is hoped to be done by end of June. And then we're hoping for the final integration for everything to be fully integrated into one in September. Simplification. So we've gotten rid of points. That was something that confused people. We've gotten rid of co-termination. I know some of you really like co-termination, but it was a constant source of confusion with people wondering where their bundled licenses went when they added a new device to an existing site and suddenly found that, where's that 1 year? Where did that go? Well, it got turned into points and then distributed across all your devices. It resulted in a lot of calls. So we're hoping by getting rid of that, it makes things a little bit simpler for the majority of you. I know there's some of you that fully understood co-termination and loved it. And unfortunately, that needs to go away. Um, and we've reduced the licenses that need to be purchased. Before we had a license for the gateway, we had a license for the switch, we had a license for the APs. They were all priced differently. So we now just have a license that works for any Nebula enabled device. So it's real simple. You've got 15 devices, doesn't matter what they are, you buy 15 1-year licenses and you're good to go. You don't have to go, well, I've got 3 switches, so I need 3 switch licenses. And we've reduced the cost of those Pro Pack licenses. So those have dropped in price. And eventually here, as we finish this integration, we're going to make it a lot easier here for you to move your devices, more importantly, move your licenses between your customers. So if you're shifting product from one site to another or from one customer to another, it'll be easy to also transfer that license. We're shooting for that to be available here end of June. So this is just showing here were our licenses before, right? You had these 3 different licenses. So now we've got just that one-year license at $29.99. So you're saving $5. Um, per AP, you're saving $10 per switch, and you're saving $30 per gateway that you need to manage. We did get rid of the lifetime licenses. That is something that can no longer be supported. So I'm sorry about that. But hopefully the cost savings here will help make that up to you. We've also added a new tier. So we still have our free base pack tier that is still sticking around. It has been changed a bit. The offerings and what you get has been reduced a bit since then. We've added a new plus pack tier, which sits between the base pack and the pro pack. So for those of you that don't need all those Pro Pack features, we've taken what are both basically the most in-demand features in that Pro Pack and offer them now at a much cheaper option here for you. So that's another option you guys have. And then the Pro Pack itself has largely been unchanged. The only 2 things that have basically gone away are, one, we had what was called MSP view, and I've got a slide coming up where I'll show you what that is. So MSP view was basically a view of all of your organizations that you manage. And that was part of the free tier. So that's been moved out of the free tier to a separate license. And then also going along with that, with Pro Pack, there was the ability to brand the Nebula web interface with your logo and hide basically our support contact information and replace it with your own. So that has moved to a new license, but otherwise Pro Pack is essentially unchanged. So this is a quick summary of some of the differences between the different ones. It's just a simple page here. I mean, obviously we've got a much longer list that covers everything here. But the primary differences that now these days are the base pack. The base pack gets you 24 hours worth of logs that are stored in the cloud. This is your views where you see what clients have been up to, what bandwidth is being used, things like that. With Plus Pack, you get 7 days, and with Pro Pack, you get a year. Admin accounts remain the same on the free version. You can have 5 admin accounts per organization. With Plus Pack, you get 8. With Pro Pack, you get an unlimited. If you're using our cloud-hosted authentication database server, free version gets you 50 entries, Plus Pack gets you 100 entries, and then Pro Pack has no limit on the number of entries. Firmware scheduling is something you can do with the free version, but we have advanced firmware scheduling, which lets you set schedules based on individual devices or by type of device. So that's something that's part of Plus and Pro Pack now. Some of the advanced reporting features, such as automatically generated reports, which have your custom logo on them. Those have been moved to those are now available in Plus Pack. Before that required Pro Pack. Network topology view, where we automatically map stuff out for you, that has been added in here to the Plus Pack, where previously it was only available on the Pro Pack. And there's some other minor stuff as well. So this new license is called the MSP pack. So for Plus and Pro pack, you need one license for each device in the organization that you're managing, right? So if you've got a free version of Nebula, you've got 10 devices there and you want to upgrade to the Plus or Pro pack, you would need to have 10 active Plus or Pro pack licenses to upgrade them. Otherwise, it would remain on the free version. So that's per device. So you need one license per device. This MSP license is an alternate license separate from Plus and Pro. You don't need Plus or Pro. It also works with the free version. So this license is designed for those of you that are larger MSPs, and it is tied to an admin account. So each admin that you want to have access to these features needs to have their own license. But once they have that license, every organization that that admin account has access to these MSP features. So you get access to the MSP portal. So again, the MSP portal is just a page that gives you an alternate view of all of your organizations and what's going on them. And the next slide here, I've got a screenshot of what that is. A lot of people never ever used it in the past. So I've been telling people who should have been using it, and they're like, wow, I never knew that existed, even though it was always there. Gets you access to that MSP branding, the ability to put your logo in the Zyxel Nebula web interface, and put your own contact details in there for support. And then we've added some new features. The first new feature we've added here is admin in teams. So this allows you basically to create groupings of your admins. So if you've got 10 or 15 different employees managing different sites, you can create a team, assign which guys you want in that team, and then assign that team to different organizations. So in the past, let's say you've got 10 guys, you would have to go to each one of your organizations and add each of those 10 guys to each organization. So now you can just add them to a team and blanket apply that to select organizations to quickly be able to modify which admins have access to which sites. So it's just an easier way of doing that, more convenient. And we've added another new feature here called cross-org synchronization, allowing you to synchronize certain settings between your customers' organizations. Again, just something there to help those larger MSPs apply changes, global changes essentially across different customers. And going forward, there will be additional enhancements and new features that we will continue to add to this MSP pack to justify it going forward. So this is the MSP portal view. So when I talk about the portal view, that is this view here. So if you don't have the MSP pack, you don't have this view, but you still have access to the view which lists all your customers. You still have access to the drop-down menus, which make it really easy to jump between customers and sites. You just don't have access to this very specific view right here. So that's it as far as the stuff that we've covered in past webinars. Again, if you want to learn more about the license changes, that's recorded and on our YouTube. If you want to learn more about the USG Flex and integration with it into Nebula, that also is on our YouTube site. Again, we're on YouTube under Zyxel North American channel. That's the name of the channel that you go to on YouTube. So now for the boring part, where we're going to go through lots and lots of the little changes that were made. So first one here, we talked about just now, the license 2.0. I wanted to highlight this screen here for you because this is an area where people don't realize how this works, and it's causing a lot of confusion. And this is something that should make your life a lot easier. So when you go into your org settings, you can go to license and inventory, and you've got these different views here. You can see an overview, which will show you a quick snapshot of how many devices you have, how many licenses you have. Anything that's set to expire in the next 90 days, that shows up there. We've got a device view where we show you all of your devices, show you the expiration date. Now, one of the things that happened when we converted from the old system to the new system, right, was that, let's say you had 18 months left on your org when we converted to the new license 2.0. So now you will have a single 12-month license plus 8 individual 1-month licenses to get you to that 18 months. So those will all stack. So one device now may have, 9 different licenses per each device. So this expiration date should be the expiration date of basically how those all stack. So basically, once all of those licenses expire, and then over here under license information, if you hover your mouse over it, it will give you a breakdown of the individual licenses that get you to that expiration date. This is also the screen you want to use if you're adding new licenses to your organization. So you can go over here and use the search function, and there are built-in filters. So you can filter and just say, show me all NAP 203 access points that are going to expire in 90 days. It will give you a list of just those APs. You can then checkbox each of them or check all, and then go to action apply licenses, and it will show you all those devices. It will automatically assign a license to each of those, assuming you have those licenses already loaded into your inventory. And then you can just click finish to apply them across multiple devices, or you can go through and review it and maybe exempt certain ones. So applying licenses in bulk to a bulk number of devices on your site is fairly easy to do using these filters. And a lot of people didn't realize that. So we've had people going, shoot, I've got, 50 devices. I've got 100 different licenses. I'm having to go through and apply them one at a time. So you can apply them one at a time, but you can use this filter system to make it much easier to bulk apply licenses across your org. Dramatically speed things up for you. And then come June, we've got a number of enhancements planned for this thing, including more filtering options and some other stuff like that to make it even easier. We realize that right now that there's some more stuff people have brought up to us and said, hey, we would like to filter like this. We'd like to just select these types of licenses. So that will be coming, those enhancements in June. And again, guys, if you have questions as we go through today, use the question and answer interface. I will see those. I do not see the chat as we go through, and I will try to answer them as we go. Another nice thing here, if you go to the help screen, there is a device function table you can pull up, and it'll help break down based on access point switches or gateway, which features are available on which products. So back in the early days of Nebula, the same feature was available on every device. The problem we ran into was new features come along and the old hardware can't support it. So now we've made it easier for you to figure out, hey, I want to use WPA3. You can quickly reference which of our APs have the ability to support that. You can go into the switch and say, hey, I want to be able to automatically reboot devices if they lock up, connected devices to the switch. Which switches can I buy that support that feature? So now we can offer a much wider range of features and be able to, this makes it a lot easier for you to figure out which devices will actually support any of these advanced features that you need. So if you're using the free version of Nebula, we have introduced something called cloud saving mode. Basically, if you don't log into your site for 30 days, we stop collecting the logs, because it's really expensive and we really want to be able to continue to offer a free tier to Nebula that's very functional. So what happens here is after 30 days, if you haven't logged in, we stop collecting that 24-hour log. This is not the log we use for troubleshooting things on the back end. This is the client behavior and stuff that you would see on the on some of the different screens when you drill down into different devices. So if we've put you in this cloud saving mode, you need to go in and basically turn it off for it to start gathering logs again. So it won't just automatically turn back on once you log in. You have to enable, hey, I want these logs again, and it'll re-enable it for you. So we've now offered the ability to group organizations together. So this is a ProPack feature, so you do have to have a ProPack license. But if you have 2 or more organizations using ProPack, when you pull up this drop down that's on the top of your the top of the interface, where it lists all of your customers, there is now a create group button that will show up. Now, it doesn't have to be a paid ProPack license. This works with trial sites as well. So anytime you set up a new organization, you get a free 30-day trial. So if you want to play with this, you can just set up 2 blank organizations using and tell it to activate the 30-day trial. And you can then play with the settings. So you can create groups, you name the group, decide which of your organizations are going to be in each group. And it now makes it easier for you to view and change some things across multiple organizations at the same time using this group. So you can now quickly see an overview of what's going on. You can quickly see inventory, which products are assigned to all of the different orgs in these groups, as well as a change log. We also have the ability to easily then create org to org VPNs. So you can create VPN connections between different customers. Um, and make it easier for you to apply multiple admins across multiple groups simultaneously without requiring the MSP license. Joe has a question here. Is cloud saving mode happen for each organization or logging in as an admin count for every organization? I believe the answer to that is I think you have to pull up the actual org itself. You have to go to their dashboard. But go ahead, send me an email and I can double check that, confirm that for you. My email is seanr@zyxel.com, or just reach out to your sales rep, Jacob, um, David Chen, or Andy, and just let them know, hey, I had this question. Can you confirm this for me? And they'll pass it on to me and I'll get you the answer either way. But I'm pretty sure you actually have to get into the dashboard to keep that going for that organization. Um, So now we've got the ability, before we had the ability, you could go into the wireless interface, see data on your wireless users. You could go into the switch interface and see information on your switch users. We now have a unified view, which will let you see all clients on your network, whether they are wireless or wired. So we've redone the cloud authentication database. This is if you are using our built-in cloud hosted database to do your authentication. So we've changed the way it works. We've cleaned it up, made it a little bit nicer. And we've added support for two-factor authentication, something people have been asking for a while. So now we do support two-factor authorization. If you are using the USG Flex and you are using Captive Portal, you can use Google authentication for wired clients. So this is if you're using the Flex to run the Captive Portal. If you're using IPsec VPN, you can also use Google two-factor authentication for remote access into the org. On the AP side of things, if you're using 802.1x to authenticate your users, you can now use Google authentication as two-factor there. And if you're using our dynamic pre-shared key, where each user gets their own unique password to log in to a single SSID, we can now use email verification for two-factor authentication there. So if you are using AP to do 802.1x, you do not need a USG Flex gateway. The AP has the ability to do Google authentication directly itself. So this is just showing here if on the USG Flex to enable two-factor authentication for Captive Portal, you find that under USG Flex configure auth method. If you want to enable two-factor authentication on the USG Flex for IPsec VPN clients, you go to the USG Flex, configure, and then remote access. So this is where you would set it up on the access points. It's a little bit harder to get to. Go to organization-wide, configure SSID settings, network access security options. There it is there. And this only works though with these supported models you see down at the bottom. So basically it works with our newest Wi-Fi 6 500 and 600 series APs, the WAX 650S, WAX 610D, WAX 510D, and then it also will work with the WAC 500, which will be launching soon, and the WAC 500H, which we have there. So Seth had a question here. Let's go back. He's asking about using two-factor authentication. Whoops, went too far. So he's asking here about two-factor authentication with SSL VPN. So yes, that's the IP, or no, you cannot use it right now with the SSL VPN. It's strictly with IPsec VPN and Captive Portal. I would not be surprised to see that coming soon in the future in another future enhancement. But officially right now, it's just for Captive Portal and for IPsec VPN. So there we go through there. Okay, so now let's start talking about the USG Flex. So depending on whether you are using an NSG gateway or a USG Flex, you will get a different menu options as far as what you can do. And the reason we've done that is because obviously there are feature differences between the USG Flex and the NSG. So now, you know, instead of showing you everything and just trying to mark what is or isn't available, we're just giving you separate interfaces. Now, one of the things a lot of our Nebula customers like to do is they like to create their customer org, they like to create the site, and they like to pre-configure stuff before the hardware's even got to them, right? You know, you're waiting for distribution to ship you the product, and in the meantime, you can go ahead with Nebula and start setting stuff up. So that's true now too with the USG Flex. So there is also an option. I don't have the screen here, but you can go into the settings and you can change and basically tell Nebula, hey, I'm going to use an NSG, or hey, I'm going to use a USG Flex. And if you choose USG Flex, you tell it which model of USG Flex. So that way you can start configuring these devices before you've actually received the unit and assigned it to a site. Seth, I will get to your questions here in a minute. We'll come to that and I'll answer it here in just I think it's just a few more slides before we get to it. So here you go. So Seth was asking, do we need to factory reset existing USG Flex units to bring them into Nebula, or is there a settings migration option? So right now, regardless of whether we're talking a USG Flex, whether we're talking an access point, or we're talking our switch, when you switch them from traditional standalone mode to cloud mode, you lose all of your settings. So if you're going to switch modes, you know, back up your settings. So if you ever switch back from cloud back to standalone, you can just restore your old thing. But no, currently there is no ability to migrate settings from standalone mode to cloud mode or vice versa for any of the Nebula devices. And that's just because the feature sets are still different enough between the different modes that it's hard to do. I know it is something we are planning at some point to add, but I couldn't promise how soon or how long that's going to be, but it is something we're looking at for the future. So to use USG Flex in the cloud, you have to go through what we're calling zero touch provisioning. And hopefully, Seth, that answered your question. So zero touch provisioning is not zero touch. I have no idea why it is named this. It should be called lots and lots of touch provisioning. So it's a little bit more complicated than other Nebula devices to get them into the Nebula cloud. It is being done this way for security purposes, right? Your gateway is so important to your customer's network. It is so important that hackers or whatever don't get access to your firewall gateway that's protecting everything behind it. That we have added some extra steps to verify when you are moving a Nebula, a USG Flex to the cloud, that you really do have access to the device and you really do want to move it to the cloud. So it is going to be a little bit more complicated than other Nebula devices for that reason. Just real quickly, you need to upgrade the USG Flex to firmware 5.0. The units that are out there are using an older firmware. I don't know how soon we'll sell through those. So you will want to upgrade them to 5.0. We suggest that you factory reset the device after you have done that to clear everything in there to make sure the move to the cloud is clean. And then once you do that, you have to either use a special URL that you enter in that authenticates the gateway while you are connected to the gateway, or alternately, we give you a file that you load onto a USB stick and you plug that USB stick into the USG Flex. Now, because there's a lot of steps involved because of this, when you go into the Nebula interface here, you will see, whoops, that's weird. You will see here that send ZTP installation file to installer. So basically you go into the Nebula interface, say, hey, here's the USG Flex. I want to move this and use this in Nebula. And then you can put in an email address there and we will send you an installation guide. which walks you through what needs to be done to move it in there. So you've got that, or whoever your installer is has access to those instructions, so you can just easily follow those and get to do it. So apologies for it being a little bit more complicated than it probably needs to be, but it's being done for security reasons just because of how important this is. So we have the ability now in the USG Flex to group your different ports and have the ability to choose individually which port is WAN, which port is LAN. Now the NSGs do have the ability to group ports together, but that's predefined. You don't have the ability to flexibility to do it. With the USG Flex, you can create up to 20 different WAN and 20 different LAN port groupings. With the NSGs, what is a WAN, what is a LAN is fixed. On the NSG or on the USG Flex, it's a lot more flexible as to which each port is being used as. So we've now got the ability both in the USG Flex and the NSG to be able to enable or disable L2TP over IPsec and IPsec VPN separately, where before you did not. Josh is asking, can you add a block of public IPs to a single WAN port? I apologize. I don't know the answer to that. I don't do a lot generally with USG Flex or USGs in general, and a little bit less of switches. I mostly focus on APs and stuff, so I'm not sure on that. Just go ahead and send that in as a question. Just reach out to your salesperson and ask them, and they will get you the answer to that. I'm sorry, I don't have the answer. So now we've got the ability to turn these on and off individually instead of being linked. We now have the ability to do a lot more when it comes to policy routes. So the NSG was really sort of stuck on with very limited ability for policy routes. So now with the USG Flex, we give you more flexibility when it comes to policy routes, including the ability to do traffic shaping. And we've added the ability to do static routes, which I believe we could not do previously on the NSG. So that is there for you. We now have a new feature. This requires as I understand it, it requires both a ProPack license and a UTM license to be able to use this. It's called Collaborative Detection and Response, and basically allows your USG Flex gateway to communicate with one of these supported models of access point down here to sort of extend out security to those devices. So basically, as traffic goes through the gateway, if the gateway notices there's something weird going on with a wireless client, we now have the ability, should you choose to configure it to do this, to basically block that wireless client. So we can choose to block them from getting internet access. We can choose to block them from being able to access the gateway entirely, or we can just block them entirely from being able to pass traffic. So it uses the IDP and the other UTM features to sort of recognize, hey, wait a minute, this looks like a client device, it's got malware on it or something like that, and to be able to block them. So as we mentioned a little bit earlier, we've now got this secure Wi-Fi feature. So secure Wi-Fi requires its own separate secure Wi-Fi license to work that is separate from the UTM license. And that allows you to basically turn one of these supported access points into sort of a VPN appliance and allow you to basically allow that home user to connect to the same SSID they connect to at the office and get access to those same office resources as they were working from home. And because it's being done through an access point, you solve a lot of the issues of double net and stuff like that if you're trying to give somebody a, uh, a VPN appliance to make these connections. This is just showing you here the screens where you can set this up. In addition to the existing SSIDs, you can set custom SSIDs and stuff for them. As I understand it right now, basically, if they are on that SSID, all traffic goes over this secured VPN tunnel back to the main office. I think we are currently looking at the ability to do some sort of split tunnel, but at the moment, all traffic on that SSID goes over that secure connection. So now we've got what's called Secure Profile Sync. This is a ProPack feature, and it allows you to basically, if you have got multiple sites under one of your customers, it allows you to sync certain profile settings or security settings across multiple sites simultaneously. So if you need to change something, you don't have to log into each individual site and change it. You just use this feature to do it. And you can go into individual sites here and you can override certain settings. So the secure profile sync won't change it. So if you've got, you need to change it on 5 sites, but the 6th site doesn't need the change, you can set that up to so it doesn't get changed. So we've added here again, ProPack feature, smart configuration here now has the ability to set up VPN areas, and it's enhanced to be able to work with non-Nebula VPN peers and group them together and apply settings to them. So that's a nice little feature there to extend out how the VPNs work. So basically, VPN areas kind of allow traffic to pass from over one VPN connection to another site and then over its VPN connection to another site, provided they're set up to share connectivity that way. So this is just showing here, we've now got a site-wide application view. So before we had the ability to go in, right, and you could see what UTM is found, you could see what, antivirus is found. So now we've got a view that's just showing you what's going on your network based on individual application and giving you the ability to either block or rate limit those applications directly from this screen. We've now integrated Secu Reporter or Secure Reporter, depending on who you're talking to, how it's pronounced, with Nebula Cloud. So you've now got, if you're using a USG Flex, you've got all of those reports and features that are built into Nebula. Plus, you still have access to all the Secu Reporter functionality. And we've now added DNS-based content filtering. So that is on top of the standard content filtering. It's a little bit faster than normal content filtering, but it can be bypassed if people are doing a secure DNS connection to a third-party DNS. So you wouldn't want to use this to replace your regular content filtering. You would use it to supplement it. So that's it for the security gateway features. We'll now go on to access points. Seth is asking about SSL. Let's see here. SSL VPN configuration via Nebula. I'm not familiar enough with it to be able to answer the question. Again, I'm sorry on that. Reach out to your salesperson and they can loop in Marcus, who is our sales engineer, or they can loop in Tri, who is our manager for the USG Flex products, to get those answers. I'm just not familiar enough with the product to know the answers to some of those questions. So on to access points, something where in general I'm pretty familiar with. So we've changed the way the screen works here. We've just basically changed this. Instead of saying authentication in Captive Portal, we've now got SSID settings in Captive Portal customization, just to try to make it a little bit clearer which screen you need to go to change things. It was kind of odd that you would go to authentication and would have access to certain SSID settings. So it now makes a little bit more sense. And we've changed the way that screen looks where you configure your access points. So we've changed it to make it a little bit easier to use. We've grouped things together a little bit better. Put the features that people are most likely to use up towards the top. So we now have the ability to do wireless LAN weight control. So that is something here where basically one of the issues we have with wireless, right, is everyone wants it faster, faster, faster. However, if you've got slower clients connected, right, it takes them more time to send the same amount of data as a faster client. So if you've got a lot of slow clients on your network, it ends up slowing down the entire network as they hog the airtime to transmit their data. So we've now got the ability to go in there and say, hey, you know what? You must be connected at least this speed to be able to transmit data. If you're not fast enough, we won't allow you to connect. So something people play around with. This is also a big deal on networks where you are doing a lot of multicast, because multicast by general operates at very, very slow features. And this is, I believe, available on all APs. I know it says 650S over here. I think that's for this down here. So with the 650S, we've also added this ability of what we call zero weight DFS. So if you've tortured yourself and sat through one of my Wi-Fi 101 webinars, you will know that a big chunk of the 5 gigahertz spectrum is what's called DFS. This is a chunk of spectrum that was used for radar, weather radar, airport radar, before it was opened up for Wi-Fi use. So because of that, you aren't allowed to transmit on those DFS channels unless you verify that you're not being used by one of these legacy services that originally had access to these frequencies. And so the challenge is if you're using one of these channels, and then your device detects, hey, wait a minute, there is a radar now operating. Um, it could take several minutes before you got moved to a different channel because of how long it takes to switch to a different channel, listen and verify no one is using that channel, and then allowing it to be enabled again. So the WAX 650S has a third radio that's only purpose is to monitor the RF environment. So if you enable this feature, we will be able to monitor these other DFS channels and know we can basically instantly switch to this other DFS channel um, without having to pause and wait and verify that channel also is not in use. So that's a new feature we've got there. We've also sort of modified the algorithm we use to help reduce false positives for legacy devices using the frequency that you're using. We've added a new SSID simple mode. I don't know who this is for, but apparently it's been a big requested item where we've basically dropped all of those settings and basically just give you the SSID name and select whether it's open or uses a password. And if it uses a password, you put in the password. So very simple to set up. So for those people that are using this in more of a home environment, or for those that are just using very basic Wi-Fi, this hides those advanced settings. You can turn this on or off. We've now got a cool thing, which is per AP SSIDs. So historically with Nebula, every AP has the same SSIDs configured. We've got a max of 8 SSIDs per radio. The challenge we run into is on MXU deployments and hospitality deployments. We're running into situations where there are individual APs for each room or each apartment in a building, and they each need their own unique SSID and own unique password because you only want the guy in room 203 accessing his AP. You don't want him accessing the neighbor's SSID. Um, so we now have the ability to do this. We have the ability to turn this feature on, and we are able to you're able to define a rule, and you go into help there and it'll show you what your different variables are. So you create a new SSID name using variables. For instance, some text that you define plus the room number, some text you define plus the last, X number of digits of the MAC address, something like that that you can use to give it a unique SSID. And then you can also define, how complex you want this password to be. And we will automatically deploy those across your APs, and you will have the ability to export that as an Excel file. So your tech support or your front desk can reference, okay, here's the SSID for your room. Here's the password to connect to that SSID. So it's a really cool way of doing that, this programmable SSIDs. So some other stuff here that doesn't deserve its own slide. We've extended dynamic pre-shared key to additional APs. It's now supported by the NWA 210AX, the WAC 500, the WAC 500H, and the NWA 1123 ACV3. So for those of you that aren't familiar with DPPSK, it solves one of the issues that you've got in a lot of businesses, right? You want each of your users to get onto your corporate network. But if one of your employees gets fired or leaves, you want to remove their access to that corporate network. And the official way to do this is to use WPA Enterprise and use 802.1x to provide authentication. For whatever reason, a lot of sites don't like to use 802.1x like this and end up just doing like a home user and having one password that they share with all of their employees, which is really highly insecure, especially if one of those employees, when they leaves, does so on poor terms and might want some revenge or something like that. So with dynamic pre-shared key, you have one SSID. Everybody connects to the same SSID, but each individual user has their own unique password. And when you authenticate with that password, you're allowed to then dynamically assign different VLANs to the user based on the password used. So that way, if somebody leaves your company, you just deactivate that one pre-shared key. Um, and they can no longer get on the network. And it also gives you the flexibility, to easily make it so, sales guys have access to these VLANs, your operations team has access to these VLANs, accounting has access to these VLANs to control which network resources individual users have without having to resort to using 8021X and the hassles of configuring that on a client device and some of the issues that come up when you've got a poor connectivity with that. So that's been extended to those APs. We now have Storm Control, which has been there as a Pro Pack feature. It is now a Base Pack feature. But Storm Control does only work, though, with these devices here. These enhanced Storm Control as WAC 650S, WAC 610D, WAC 510D. Basically, the new Wi-Fi 6 500 series APs and the new Wave 2 500 series APs. So that is it for wireless. Now on to switch. We're almost done, guys. We're getting through this. I know I'm not the most exciting speaker, and this is not the most exciting topic. So you can assign switch names. These switch names will now be used in the syslog file and in some of the other stuff. So you can more easily see what's going on using the switch name instead of being stuck having to use, I think, the MAC address. We now have the ability to do set up here IP interfaces above and beyond the default automatically assigned one. So this is primarily for our layer 3 switches and for our surveillance switches. So to use some of the surveillance switch features, you do need to have a IP interface defined. So we now have the ability to do that. And then if you have a layer 3 switch, we now have the ability to set up static routes for that switch. So people say, well, why do I need multiple IP interfaces for my switch? Again, it's for more advanced features. So an IGMP querier, auto PD recovery. This is that feature we have where I believe this is the feature we have where if we detect a device stops responding to a PoE enabled switch, we can reboot that device. ONVIF, which is a standard for discovery that's used by IP security cameras and for doing L3 routing here. So it's primarily for that L3 switch and for the 1350 series surveillance switches. If you go into the live tool settings now, we now have the ability in real time to see the MAC table, the ARP table, and the routing table. So giving you some more tools here for troubleshooting issues on your network. So if you're using the ProPack features here, we have the ability here when you're going in and setting up ONVIF, will automatically pop up a link letting you know, hey, you need to set up that IP interface we were just talking about a couple slides ago, and we'll give you a link to take you to that screen to set it up. And same thing here, if you go into the advanced IGMP settings, which is a ProPack feature, we'll now have that link down there for you. So again, with the 1350 series switches, we support ONVIF now. So that is there in the Nebula interface. Does require a ProPack. And surveillance monitoring here to make sure the device is up and gathering information using ONVIF ProPack feature. Going in here now, we do support and give you the option to switch the media type between the standard 1 gig SFP and 10 gig SFPs. And if you are using our ProPack and you are using it to provide IPTV reporting, we now have an ability here to automatically create the filter rule for those UPnP multicast packets. So we're filtering out the unneeded packets. And then lastly here, a switch, if you remove it from one site, it will maintain its management interface settings when you remove it from the site. So that, guys, I know it's been a long webinar. That is the summary of all of the changes that just rolled out. What was it, 2 weeks ago, 2.5 weeks ago? So a lot of new stuff in there, a lot of big changes and a lot of small changes. I think mostly it's quality of life improvements, some new features, some stuff that's been missing have been added in there. I know some of it's been really confusing, especially with the licensing, and I do apologize for that. But hopefully with these changes here, you'll start seeing more and more benefits as we complete this integration with the 2 different licensing systems into the one new unified licensing system. So if you have any other questions, go ahead and send them in. Again, I apologize if I'm unable to answer some of these questions here when it comes to the USG Flex Gateway or some of the advanced switch features. Here we go. Seth is asking, any updates on PoE injector for the WAX 650S? So good question. The answer is yes, we do have some updates on that. So just for those that don't know, the WAX 650S is our flagship Wi-Fi 6 product. In order to operate it at full speed, you need an 802.3 BT standard PoE device to provide the PoE power, or you need to plug it in with an AC adapter, which we'll sell you. So the challenge we run into is most switches out there don't support BT yet. It's a rather new technology, and there's not a lot of devices that require this higher power. The other challenge we run into is because the Wi-Fi 6 on these devices is so fast, you really need a 5 gig Ethernet connection to be able to not have your wired connection be your bottleneck to your wireless. Usually it's the other way. The wireless is the bottleneck. With some of these new faster Wi-Fi 6 devices, your wired connection tends to be the bottleneck. So the challenge we have is on the WAX 650S is we've only got 2 switches that support this BT standard, and only one of those switches supports 5 gig Ethernet. And it's really expensive and has a lot of cool features, and a lot of people don't need that. They just need, the power. So we do have a new PoE injector coming. It is called the PoE 12-60W, I believe, PoE 12-60W or PoE-1260W, something along those lines. It is coming. It has been ordered. It will be here June or July. With the way that things are at the ports, I don't want to promise June, but June or July, it will be here. If you have need for that, if you think you need a lot of these, reach out to your salesperson, let them know, hey, help me out here on this new PoE injector. Let me know what the price is. I don't know the price off the top of my head, but we can look up and give you an idea of what the price is going to be. You can let us know how many of these you think you need, so we can make sure we get those forecast and have enough in the system for everybody that has demand for that. So that is coming. Again, it's the PoE 12-60W, or some variation upon that with the dashes. That will be coming here soon. They have been ordered. They are on the way. So that will be a PoE injector that can provide up to 60 watts of power to a connected device and has 5 gig Ethernet interface on it. So it will not be a bottleneck on the wired, and it will not, and it will fully power the WAX 650S. Now, the other thing to add here for the WAX 650S is if you do have it connected to a standard 802.3 AT switch or PoE injector, it will still work. It just slows down the wireless to be able, because it can't operate at full power. We have people that have been using it that way, didn't realize they needed the higher output power and loved the performance before finding out that they could get even better performance with adding an AC adapter or changing the switch they were using. So yes, that is coming. So Seth is also asking here, the GS1350-6HP has one BT port, correct? So yes, the GS1350-6HP can plug in one device to it, but the downside is that is a 1 gig only connection, so you will have slower throughput because of that. So the main switch at the moment that we recommend is the XS1930-12HP, which we are unfortunately sold out of at the moment. There are more coming, but we are currently out of stock locally, and I think most of our distributors have sold out as well, just because the demand's been higher than we had expected, unfortunately. And as just so in case those of you who haven't been following things know, the industry right now is in really rough shape. Back in the early days of COVID, a lot of the actual people who make the silicone, who make the raw material, decided that that sales were going to go down. No one was going to be upgrading their networks. So the switch production capacity from the chips that we use in networking equipment and in other type of stuff, and they move those chip production to things like tablets and cell phones. So there is a shortage in general of these types of switches, these types of chips that we need to build these products. On top of that, not only did sales not decrease for these types of devices, sales have actually increased. Maybe the models have changed, but as people started working from home, huge change. There's been a change in demand. So now there's more people buying these products than originally planned. And then on top of all of this, we are facing port delays. So we've got the product, we've made the product, it's ready to go. Because of the port delays unloading, like here at the US, because people are buying more products, so there's more products coming into port, but the ports are also operating at reduced capacity because of COVID to avoid crowding. So product is now sitting on boats sometimes for up to 3 weeks before it can be offloaded. And because it's sitting and taking so long for it to get offloaded, the boat doesn't get back to Taiwan or China to pick up the next load on time. So we're seeing delays on shipments on both sides. We're loading stuff into a container and then waiting 3 weeks for a boat to show up, 3 weeks after the original schedule date. And then once it gets here, it's stuck for maybe up to another 3 weeks sitting on the boat waiting to get offloaded. So all of those things are compounding things and making supply issues really, really rough on us. On top of all of that, most of the chipset and IC vendors out there have either raised prices on us or have warned us that they will be raising prices on us in the future. So at least some of that probably is going to have to be passed on, as well as shipping prices have skyrocketed. So it's really rough right now for us as far as supply goes. So don't know how many of you wanted to hear that, but I'm just letting you know what's going on in our industry, and this is affecting everybody. We've got people that never used to buy our product coming to us because they can't get whichever product they normally buy. And this is why it's an industry-wide issue right now, as far as the supply of the chips and shipping delays. So that, guys, is it for questions. So I'm going to go ahead and end today's webinar. If you have some more questions, you can email me directly, seanr@zyxel.com, or just reach out to whoever your normal rep is, Jacob, David, or Andy, and they can get you answers to those questions, whether they ask me, whether they ask Try, or they can loop in Marcus, depending on what that question is. But thanks, guys. I appreciate you joining us today. I hope you learned something on this. I hope you know there's something that you could take away from this, and this is worth your time. Thank you.